All right, it is 17 minutes gone past 5, and this is Business Hub on Smooth 98.1. And today on Business Hub, we will be taking a look at exploring a tax exemption for 95% of Nigeria's informal sector. And I have a guest who will be giving us more highlights on this, and he's none other than Damilare Asimiyu, and he is a macroeconomic strategist with AfriInvest Research and Consulting. Good evening to you, Damilare.
Yes, good evening. Thanks for having me on the show.
Great, great. And indeed, you can as well be a part of Business Hub this evening. You can join in by sharing your thoughts or questions that you may have on our WhatsApp platform on 009 4440981. And we're streaming live on YouTube, so you can go there and not just see what we look like, but as well as, share your thoughts as well at Smooth 981. Okay, so talking about the tax exemptions and informal sector, let's even get into this. When we're actually looking around the world, we have noticed some patterns, and it's a similar pattern of trust deficit between the informal sector as well as the government when it comes to paying taxes. I'm just curious as to why is this?
Well, let me start by saying that every human being actually have that natural aversion for paying tax. And that is why even in the most advanced countries, you have, the word tax evasion or tax avoidance even being pronounced among the wealthiest. The reason is because every natural human being is selfish, and every human being doesn't like their wealth going down. And even in the scripture, see a man who has 100 sheep, one got missing. He kept the 99 to go and look for the missing one. Why? He doesn't want that wealth to diminish. So that natural aversion for tax is there. Now, when you then bring it down to the to emerging economies like Nigeria, where you have a lot of, the large section of the economy being an informal sector. The players in the informal sector are more tax aversion, or there seems to be more strong lack of trust between them and the government. Using Nigeria as a case study, right? The reason why that is highly pronounced is the fact that, businesses thrive on certain basic things, and the government have over the years not provided that. And so this has perhaps widened the trust gap. For instance, you go to several major markets, you can't find public toilet provided by the government, and they take tax from those people every day. So how do you want them to trust the government to either increase their tax or expand it? I mean, in other climes, you have good road network, you have mass transit, you have basic amenities like affordable healthcare and education. But these are things that over the years, right, is not available in most emerging markets, using Nigeria again as an example. So if people in the informal sector have seen themselves as the government of their own, they do their road, they provide their own toilet, they provide their own water, they have to send their children to school from the little they are struggling to get. So it becomes very difficult to convince them when government is coming with any tax proposition. And so this is why the lack of trust in government as far as tax is concerned is more pronounced in emerging markets like Nigeria than overseas. But naturally, every man doesn't like to be taxed. But when you then see value for what you are being taxed for, your willingness to pay the tax will actually grow normally.
I like the fact that you said once we see evidence why or with regards to how our taxes are being used, we wouldn't even bother. We would say, okay, you know what, I can see it. That's why I'm paying for it, and we'll move on. But, coming to something that was actually a quote that was actually said, made by Taiwo Oyedele. He's the chairman of the Presidential Tax Committee. And I quote, he said, "We think that the informal sector are people who are trying to earn a legitimate living. However, we should allow them to be and support them to grow to a point where they can have the ability to pay taxes. So my question is, what do you make of this quote?
On a lighter note, that quote is just a formal expression of the phrase of the president that a lot of people have been using outside. They say, let the poor breathe.
Breathe.
Now, so
Okay.
I mean, being serious with what Mr. Taiwo said, that is actually
Yes.
how sustainable tax system works. You don't tax
Mm-hmm.
a business from the beginning. In fact, the way tax works is
Yeah.
what you sow is what you give. For instance, even in the medieval period, before the kings that taxes people on the output of their farm and what have you will tax them, they first
Mm-hmm.
provide them ability to farm on that land
The
and
farm on the
perhaps
land.
the
Okay.
security to even guard those farms for them, right? So thereafter,
Mm.
it becomes easy to tax them. Even in the
Mm-hmm.
scriptures, right? God
Mm.
provided for man first before asking him to bring 1/10. So the quote of Mr. Yodele is very in line from whatever perspective you want to look at it. If you want to have
Okay.
tax revenue on a sustainable basis, whereby it will be
Mm-hmm.
a win-win for both ends, it will be a win for the businesses that are to pay the tax and that of the government.
Mm-hmm.
You need to allow those businesses to the sort
Thrive.
of environment for them to thrive. And
Mm.
so you begin to do that. So, I mean, looking at the scenario of a lot of businesses in Nigeria is a very difficult one for them. And so if you come up with too many taxes, we then have an escalation of the sort of experiences we saw last year, where so many businesses are closing down. And as many businesses are
Mm.
closing down, you are pushing too many people into unemployment. That will also further lead to social vices. And again, a time will come, you might even have no one to tax. So truly, it's good to allow for businesses in incubation stage or growth stage to stabilize. And one of the incentives to make them stabilize is to
Mm.
exempt them from some taxes so that they can move from incubation stage on time and move to
Mm.
a steady growth level where you can begin to tax them, and they will now be paying that tax, on a sustainable basis.
Well, I'm hoping that that sustainable base that we were talking about, the basis will actually make sense at the end of the day. Because if we're paying taxes and we're not seeing the benefit, it will definitely be these individuals will feel like, oh, okay, I'm just wasting my money. I'm not seeing the benefits. But I like what you said. We just need to give them time to, as Oyedele has said, we need them to breathe. So when they breathe, we'll be able to see how we can now take those taxes from them, and then they'll be able to thrive better. But you know what? The informal sector actually makes up a large part of Nigeria's economy, if we're being honest right now, right? As well as we see them also creating employment. However, I want to know what your response to the argument that they should pay more taxes, because hey, I'm not gotten. I know you made reference to Bible times. You also made reference to medieval times, how they will first create this enabling environment for them before they collect those taxes from them. But even if you create those environments for them and you first collected the first tax, they've not seen the benefits that they are supposed to be enjoying. How come you're now levying them more taxes? How are they supposed to survive? What's your take on that?
I think the canon of taxation, I mean, the five major canon of taxation does not even support imposing too much taxes on the informal sector for so many reasons. One, you just talked about the fact that the informal sector contributes significantly to the Nigerian economy. Estimates
True.
have shown that Nigerian economy is about 40% informal sector. And in
Mm.
terms of job creation, the informal sector accounts for almost 75% of the job creation in Nigeria. And I will give some very interesting statistics. As
Okay.
of the last time the NBS published labor force statistics in Nigeria, we have almost 96 million people in the labor force segment. Meanwhile, the formal sector, the total employment in the formal sector is between 8 and 9.5 million. So meaning that the rest are in the informal sector. And if I also use the bank as an example of the formal sector, right, you'll be
Mhm.
shocked or perhaps be surprised that the total employment in the banking sector given NBS's data, is less than 100,000. So, and we have more than 20 million people working. So it then shows you that the informal sector is actually a very large, I mean, a major contributor to the labor market. Now, bringing it back to my initial argument that the canon of taxation does not support taxing them aggressively. Now, one of the canon of taxation is equity. So equity means that you should tax every player in an economy on a fair note and not to be too aggressive. So if you impose too much taxes on the informal sector, who happens to be the largest employer of labor, like we are trying to establish with numbers, right? You weaken the ability to create jobs. And when you weaken the ability of a sector to create jobs, you are creating menace for the society. Because the reality is that, especially now that technology is advancing, the former employment opportunity in the formal sector will continue to thin out, because you're having AI these days, you have a lot of things that takes the place of human. But in the informal sector, they still have the capacity to take in as many people as possible to work for them. So if this sector is not given the sort of enabling environment we have, that will make them thrive. What you will see in an economy like ours, where the government does not even have capacity to give palliative, so to say, to unemployed people, unlike what we have in advanced countries where you have unemployment benefit to people. So if you then choke the informal sector that is providing for these people, you have a lot of social vices growing, and it perhaps highlights why we're having social vices in Nigeria. So the informal sector, to cut my story short, is very viable in driving growth in an economic like Nigeria, in creating jobs, because they have the capacity. And so it's very important to consider them in any tax policy, not to choke them off.
That's important, because once, like you said, once you start choking the informal sector, and these ones are trying to, just help the economy thrive, you're now making them feel burdened. It will be a problem, and we wouldn't want miscreants roaming around and seeing that we're not making the best of our taxes. All right, don't forget that you can as well be a part of Business Hub this evening by sharing your thoughts or questions on WhatsApp on 009 4440981. And we're talking about exploring a tax exemption for 95% of Nigeria's informal sector. And it's interesting because when we're talking about the informal sector, this is the regular person who's just selling something around the areas. Well, there's one thing that actually struck me, and it has to do with the taxes that we see, overtaxing from markets. Let me use the market sector as an example. If you go into the market, say you're trying to buy something, you naturally hear the market men or market women complaining that, they pay taxes in the morning, pay taxes in the afternoon, and pay taxes in the evening. Same thing applicable with those who are, riding cars or buses, rather, at the bus backs. They already have those taxes, but they haven't seen the benefits of those taxes. The roads in the markets are still looking depleted. The infrastructures that is supposed to cover them and make them feel protected, even security isn't in place. But we will talk about this and more after this quick breather. But I want you to bear that in mind while we'll take this quick breather. On the other side, you definitely will answer that. So Lagos, let's go take this quick breather. On the other side, we will continue the conversation. Don't go nowhere. So it's just about a minute, and we'll be back. 2 minutes, actually. We'll be back. Yeah.
What I love really has one but I for my God. Put full stop for water wahala.
Drink that so I can shine my shine, and I will go for it.
This is your smooth drive home. And this is Johnny Drill.
All right, 32 minutes gone past 5, and you're welcome to the second half of Business Hub on Smooth 98.1. And we are talking about how we're exploring tax exemptions for the 95% of Nigeria's informal sector. And my guest this evening is none other than Damilare Asimiyu, and he is a macroeconomic strategist with AfriInvest Research and Consulting, and he's been giving us a lot of insight with regards to all the taxes and how the options that we have and how we can make the best of it. But you know what? Let's even go into this proper. I know I spoke about marketplaces and all the taxes that come through, but the Presidential Tax Committee wants to exempt 95% of and 95% instead of focusing on the top 5% for tax collection. What do you make of that?
So I will believe that strategy is informed by data, because if you look at data, right, I think sometimes last year when we're assessing the NIBBS data for 2022 or so, the data suggests that only about 5% of Nigeria's 220 million population, or if you put it as percentage of adult population, which is about 170 million, only about 9% of those, either the total population or the adult population, 5 or 9, owns a bank account. I mean, owns more than 500, has more than 500,000 in their bank account.
In their bank.
The implication of that is you have just roughly about 11 million having more than 500,000. Now, if you then marry that to another studies by the World Bank some few years back, which shows that the wealth, 98% of the wealth in Nigeria is controlled by about 1% of the population. You then want to agree that the recommendation of Mr. Taiwo Idile is in line, because if you have 98% of the wealth of a nation concentrated in the hand of 1%, if you then tax the whole population the same way, then you are making life unbearable for some. So at this point, I think Nigerian tax system should be progressive, and that is what Mr. Taiwo Idile is proposing. It's such a tax system that takes more from the very rich in order to be able to have more resources in the hand of the government to distribute accordingly. And that is what is mostly available in most advanced economies. So, and that is why when you go to advanced economy, you hardly see the extremely wealthy there living extravagant life. Just some few days ago, I mean, we saw on social media how one of Nigeria's former senator is displaying his purchase of a Ford bulletproof vehicle and what have you. That won't be done in an advanced country, because the tax people will come for you. You will not even want to think of that. But that is possible in Nigeria because our tax system allows for some people to be extremely rich, while some are extremely poor. So I think if we have a tax system that is targeted at taking more from the 1% that is extremely rich and making the resource available to improve on key infrastructure that will make the less harm now, not only to move up, but to be able to be more productive to the economy. That would be very good. So I think that recommendation is data driven, and I think is in the right direction.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so but can technology make a difference in the way taxes are collected, in your opinion?
My straight answer is yes, and I will give two instances or two examples. Before the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FRS) adopted what we call the Tax Pro Max technology, I think they fully adopted it late 2022. When you look at VAT, which is value added tax, and CIT, company income tax component of government revenue, it has before 2022, right? The number always look very tiny and unencouraging. But since adopting that technology, even with all the macroeconomic challenges in Nigeria, high inflation, businesses closing down, weak exchange, and what have you, in the last 2 years, the company income tax and value-added tax revenue have outperformed the budgeted numbers. What makes the difference? What makes the difference is just the fact that the leakages, the level of leakages in the tax system have been plugged. You made mention before we went on the commercial break of complaints by a lot of market women saying that some people will come in the morning, collect tax, some will come in the afternoon, at night. That money don't get to anywhere. And that is because our tax structure, especially across many states, are very faulty. So people just take tax based on the fact that they are opportune to be in one position or the other. The money doesn't get to the government. And why? Because it is not technological driven. And that is why Lagos is one of the states whereby the government, in terms of IGR, or what you want to look at it from tax revenue, is the highest. Why? Lagos has adopted technology long ago. In fact, Lagos can be said to be like the pace setter for the federal government in driving its tax collection through technology. So using technology is very efficient in an economic like Nigeria, where the rule of law is still very fragile and corruption is high. So technology helps in reducing leakages and promotes improves collection and reduce leakages to the barest minimum.
I like the fact that you said that we need to have technology improved on so that it can also reduce all the leakages that we're having. But indeed, for it to work, I'm just curious, doesn't it mean that we need to put more efforts or look for players who are going to want to join in the sector to make sure that this technology is working to make the tax sector profitable for us?
So anything technology is defined by the acronym GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. The efficacy of any technology is a function of the strategy or the effectiveness of those that are driving it. Even if you have the best technology, if you don't have the framework to deploy it properly, it will still not deliver very well. And I think getting the right framework is one of the jobs of Mr. Taiwo Edele. And if we could get it right, having the right framework, by the time we deploy technology, it will help. Before FRS deployed the Tax Pro Max technology, they already have the sort of what I would describe as the strong framework. They have robust data of who are those people eligible to pay tax, where are they, how should it be collected in the most efficient manner, and which is one of the canon of taxation. Tax collection must be seamless, must be efficient. And so if we can balance having both the framework to deploying the tax, and one of the framework is that you have a robust tax database, and that is missing in Nigeria. The informal sector, for instance, are not fully captured in a reliable database. If you have a database, then you don't need the services of those people that goes to the market in the morning and collect money, because I see that as extortion. The database will give enough, idea of what a typical person sells, how they sell it, and what should be charged on them. And I think that will also go in line with our push to having financial literacy, or let me say financial inclusion rates go up, because the more you have market people also use digital channels, let's say using POS and what have you to sell, the better it is to monitor or evaluate what they sell and tax them appropriately. And the tax will flow rightly. We have that in Kenya. We have that in some other African countries. It's not rocket science. It is doable. We just need to have the framework and the right technology and the political will, rather, to also drive it so that it can work for us. There's nothing that can make tax collection efficient than making it technology driven.
All right, I like that. For it to be efficient, we have to make sure that it is technology driven. All right, I have the message here from DG, and he says, "Good evening. Please, what is the estimated total annual tax revenue in Nigeria? And why does it seem that tax revenue is not having any impact in our society?" And finally, he says, "What's the way forward?" Hmm. Might get weigh in on that.
Yeah, so I mean, based on FRS number, right? Gross collection last year hit about 11 trillion. Of course, there is a provision that allows FRS to deduct what we call cost of collection, because they have staff, they have offices, they have personnel that deploy health facilities and what have you.
Yeah.
But even the Finance Act, far back 2020, has pegged the collection costs at not more than 50% of whatever we collect. So for instance, if I'm FRS and I am able to collect up to 11 trillion in tax, the amounts I can put forward as costs that can be reduced from what we eventually go to the federation account cannot more than 50%. So meaning that at least last year, 50% of what was collected as tax hit the federation account from where it was then distributed accordingly. Of course, we have different taxes. So there is a company income tax that is solely a federal government tax. There's a part that is value-added tax, which the state takes the largest proportion, I think about 50%. The local government take the next 25%, and I think the federal government is only about 15 or so. But by and large, if FRS number is anything to go by, we did gross of about 11 trillion last year.
Okay, that's good to know. And but I want to know, now that the presidential committee says that it is speaking to the states around the country to get rid of nuisance taxes, how important is it to get rid of these taxes itself, since they are saying they're nuisance taxes? So removing them, what's the way forward with that?
I think the word nuisance, calling it nuisance tax, I mean, captured the reality of what we just narrated a moment ago, whereby different set of people come to small businesses and collect. And at the end of the day, the IGR of those states are very terrible. I can tell you based on data that, save for Lagos, Ogun, and I think Kaduna, plus River, the other states have IGR as percentage of their revenue below 40%, even up to 2022. That is only Lagos that have its tax as percentage of revenue close to about 60, then the likes of Ogun and the others within 48 and close to 50%. What is the difference? The difference is that those other states still depend on that nuisance approach, using people to go around. So why I support the opinion of Mr. Yodele that this needs to be taken away is that what is the benefit of it for all those states that are still promoting this nuisance tax? They still put their hands at their back every month, then go to Abuja to go and receive FAC allocation. About 30 states in Nigeria cannot execute 40% of their spending from their IGR. They need to get FAC allocation. So what then is the benefit of something that is not even serving you? And again, the nuisance nature of the tax is also dissuading investors from coming in. You look at the foreign direct investment data for Nigeria, you just see that just about 5 states account for it. The last time I checked, we are attracted about 3.8 or 9 billion for a whole year, I think 2023. Out of that 3.9 billion, Lagos State alone accounts for almost 89%. The next 5% in Abuja. The next one is, I think, Abia, one state. Then the others, in fact, more than 20% state did not even attract a single dollar investment. Why? Nobody will take their business, no matter how small it is, to a state where the tax system is not well structured. And one business, there's what we call chain reaction. One business, the prosperity of one business normally create room for other businesses to thrive. If you have a mega business sited in a particular location now, it will allow for other businesses like food business, car business, hotel business, and other supporting businesses to spring around it. And so the fact that states are not attracting foreign direct investment, huge capital, huge investment, is telling on why even informal sectors in those other states are not doing very well. So it's very key what Mr. Taiwo said. State need to put aside all those nuisance taxes and allow for effective tax system that will even encourage large investors to come in and support the growth of other small business around it.
All right. So, you know what? There's so much to ask with regards to this, but in a minute, I want you to, just give me insight on how Nigeria's economy can actually grow so that we can now generate taxes or revenue from all these taxes. How do we, or what's the best way to go forward with it?
So one thing that has been established about tax is that it works as a give and take on a give and take principle. The government have to create the enable environments for businesses to thrive before you can tax them. For instance, I cover the brewery sector, and last year all the players in that sector made loss, huge one. How do you expect them to pay tax? They started 2024 also on a very dismal note. Those guys will not pay tax. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is that for government to expect to have tax, good tax, and on a sustainable basis, they have to be serious for the fight against inflation. Because when inflation is high, cost of operating a business will be very high. And even when businesses try to push that to final consumer will not be able to buy. So government on their part need to do like 5 key things. 1, fight inflation headlong, address the problem of insecurity, address the issue of exchange rate fluctuation, address the issue of poor road network, and the logistic bottleneck, especially at our port. Once all these factors are addressed such that the business environment is attractive, investors will flow in. Nigeria has a very large market. The most populous Black nation is not just something small. It's something we can capitalize on to make our country grow. That will drive growth, business prosperity, and higher government revenue.
All right. Thank you so much, Damilare Asimiyu. How can people reach out to you on social media for further questions and for you to respond to them?
Well, AfriInvest has a social media platform, so they should just search for AfriInvest, and they can drop their comments. And we also have, they can also send if it's personal message, they can send it to research@afriinvest.com. We will see it and address their questions.
All right. Thank you so much for all that insight given today. And I trust you'll definitely have a pleasant evening. And I want to also say thank you to Lagos as well for joining in and sharing your thoughts as well. Thank you for, sharing your thoughts as well with regards to this. Business Hub comes your way every Tuesday from 5:15. But we've got so much more in stock for you. Don't go nowhere. Stay tuned to Smooth 98.
Yeah.